This is what Alito writes. He goes, "We hold that Roe and Casey must be overruled. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision, including the one on which the defenders of Roe and Casey now chiefly rely, the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. That provision has been held to guarantee some rights that are not mentioned in the Constitution, but any such right must be, quote, deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition and implicit in the concept of ordered liberty." Alito says the right to abortion does not fall within this category. Until the latter part of the 20th century, such a right was entirely unknown in American law. Indeed, when the 14th Amendment was adopted, 3/4 of the states made abortion a crime at all stages of pregnancy. The abortion right is also critically different from any other rights that this court has held to fall within the 14th Amendment's protection of liberty. Roe's defenders characterize the abortion right as similar to the rights recognized in past decisions involving matters such as intimate sexual relations, contraception, and marriage, but abortion is fundamentally different, as both Roe and Casey acknowledge, because it destroys what those decisions called fetal life and what the law now before us describes as an unborn human being. Do you have the chills yet? Because we're just getting started. Alito writing this opinion is, he's not going to hold the place in history that he deserves, because this is masterful writing. He goes, "Stare decisis, the doctrine on which Casey's controlling opinion was based, does not compel unending adherence to Roe's abuse of judicial authority. Roe was egregiously wrong from the start. Its reasoning was exceptionally weak, and the decision has had damaging consequences. And far from bringing about a national settlement of the abortion issue, Roe and Casey have inflamed debate and deepened division. He says it is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives." Now, there's where I would probably go one step further and say that the Constitution requires us to actually protect unborn babies, not just leave it to a popular vote, but banning abortion at the federal level, that's a conversation we're going to have in the coming days. But right now, I want to keep reading what they wrote. This is what Alito says about the history, whether or not abortion was part of our national fabric before the Supreme Court ruled on it. He says, "Until the latter part of the 20th century, there was no support in American law for a constitutional right to obtain an abortion. No state constitutional provision had recognized such a right. Until a few years before Roe was handed down, no federal or state court had recognized such a right, nor had any scholarly treatise of which we are aware. And although law review articles are not reticent about advocating new rights, the earliest article proposing a constitutional right to abortion that has come to our attention was published only a few years before Roe." Now, this is really interesting because when we get to some parts of the dissent, this is what the dissent relies on. The dissent relies on the idea that precedent can't be overturned and that abortion is part of the history of our nation. And Alito destroys them. I mean, this is like one of those YouTube videos that should say Alito stomps on leftist arguments for abortion, because this is stomping on an argument here. So he says, "Not only was there no support for a constitutional right until shortly before Roe, but abortion had long been a crime in every single state. At common law, abortion was criminal in at least some stages of pregnancy and was regarded as unlawful and could have very serious consequences at all stages. American law followed the common law until a wave of statutory restrictions in the 1800s expanded criminal liability for abortions. By the time the adoption of the 14th Amendment, 3/4 of the states had made abortion a crime at any stage of pregnancy, and the remaining states would soon follow. Roe either ignored or misstated this history, and Casey declined to reconsider Roe's faulty historical analysis."